Always. Thank you all for the wonderful note I got from the sub. You guys worked hard on Friday. I appreciate it. We didn't get a chance to go over homework questions, so we'll do that now. So 31 was the first one. They want us to do the tangent of this, and I'm not familiar with this angle. I'm familiar with like pi over 4, but I want to try and get this to something that's between 0 and 2 pi. So this is definitely bigger than 2 pi, right? So when I start, I'm going to start by taking negative 15 pi over 4, and I'm going to start adding some stuff to it. And since this is in radians, I want to add a full revolution. How many radians is a full revolution? 2 pi. But I'm going to think of 2 pi as what over 4? That would be 8 pi over 4, right? That's the same as 2 pi. So if I start adding 8 pi over 4, I'm really adding 2 pi, right? So I think negative 15 pi over 4 plus 8 pi over 4 gets me to negative 7 pi over 4. Correct me if I make a mistake here. And if I add another 8 pi over 4, remember that's just a fancy 2 pi. That gets me to 1 pi over 4. Okay, and this I'm familiar with. So what we need, we're talking about coterminal angles here, right? And the whole point of this is that coterminal angles have the same values for tangent, cosine, and sine. So the tangent of negative 15 pi over 4 is the same as the tangent of 1 pi over 4 because they are coterminal angles. On the unit circle, they would be at the same spot. So I need to think about the tangent of pi over 4. I need you to be able to think through what that would look like on our unit circle. Remember, pi is here. This is pi over 2. So pi over 4 would be here, right? Is tangent positive or negative in this quadrant? Positive. So we're going to get a positive answer. And then let's go ahead and use our special right triangles. This is obviously a 45-degree angle, right? It's half a 90. So 1 root 2. And tangent is opposite over adjacent, so we're looking at 1 over 1. So 1. So our answer is going to be 1. So we had to put together a couple different concepts. We had to think about coterminal angles, add 2 pi a couple times to get this to an angle that is inside of our 0 to 2 pi unit circle. And then once we got that angle, graph that in the correct quadrant, think about whether it's positive or negative, and then use our SOHCAHTOA to determine our ratio, which was opposite over adjacent, 1 over 1. You feeling okay about those? Kind of a lot of steps to those, but this is where we're really going to get familiar with the unit circle, doing these types of problems. Are we good on 31? Any follow-ups on that one before we move on to 50? All right, this is a weird one. So this is not one of my familiar angles, right? So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to add or subtract full revolutions. And this is in radians. So I'm going to be adding and subtracting 2 pi, right? That's a full revolution. And I don't want to sit here and actually do it because we're starting at 1,000,000. And if I just start adding and subtracting 2 pi, it's going to take me a long time. But can you tell, like, if I'm adding and subtracting multiples of 2 pi from this, when I get back down to it, it's going to either end up being 1 pi or 2 pi, right? Because this is a multiple of pi, and I'm adding and subtracting multiples of pi. Those are the only two that are in our unit circle, 1 pi and 2 pi. What's this going to end up being if I keep subtracting 2 pi off of it until I get down to that? It's going to be 1 pi. And how do you know that? Because it's an odd number, right? It's definitely an odd number. So if I keep subtracting multiples of 2 pi off of it, it's always going to be an odd number. Agreed? So this is basically saying to take, this is the same as the tangent of just 1 pi. Because I could add and subtract 2 pi from this a whole bunch of times and I would end up getting 1 pi for sure, because it's an odd number. If this had been an even number, then it would come out to be 0 pi. Are we okay with why this is going to end up being 1 pi? What about this one? If I started adding and subtracting 2 pi from this, what will we eventually get to? We would get, well, this is odd. So if we keep adding and subtracting 2 pi's from it, I think we would, no, I'm sorry, this is the one. So it would be it would end up being an odd number, right? So we'd end up also getting the tangent of pi. And as long as the tangent of pi is not undefined, I'm pretty sure this answer is going to come out to be 0. And the tangent of pi is 0, isn't it? So it ends up being 0 minus 0 equals 0. I didn't even need to know that the tangent of pi was 0 to figure that out, though. Okay, so those couple problems from, what was that, 49 to 52, you just kind of got to think about, like, what are you going to end up with? Are you going to end up with an even multiple of pi, an odd multiple of pi? There's some others we can go over there if we need to. Let's move on and talk about 13. I was a little confused when I first looked at this bank of, sorry, smacked myself in the face with the camera. I was a little confused when I first looked at these because I wasn't too sure what they were asking for. This looks actually like polar coordinates to me, which we don't get into until chapter 6, I believe. And then I read the instructions and they said interval. So this is an interval. So they're giving us an interval. They're saying, and I'm guessing it's angles if we're talking radians here. They're talking from 0 to 2 pi. So if I think about my unit circle, they're asking me to focus only on the portion of my unit circle from 0 radians to pi over 2 radians. Remember, pi would be here, so this would be pi over 2. So they want us focusing on angles in this interval here. So we're talking about quadrant 1. So the question asks us, is sine and cosine going to be positive or negative in that quadrant? So, well, sine's going to be positive in there and cosine's going to be positive there too, right? Do you guys remember the 4-word sentence that helps us remember? Oh, you're awesome. All students take calculus. A means that all 3 of them are positive in that quadrant. So you'd also asked about 15. 15 asked us to look at the interval from pi to 3 pi over 2. So in 15, they're asking us to look from pi to 3 pi over 2. So in this quadrant, sine and cosine would both be negative. So they're just asking you to look at, oh, and they wanted tangent also. Yeah, tangent would also be positive for this. And that's for this quadrant. And for this one, sine cosine would be positive, tangent would be negative. No, other way around. Sine and cosine would be negative, tangent would be positive here. All right, what other questions do you have from that assignment before we get into new stuff? We good? I know I have several assignments to check. We're going to jump into the notes today. Just hang on to your assignments. I will get them and get you credit for them.